Hello and welcome to another edition of Final Cut Pro Help Live. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today's an exciting one. Yesterday, Apple released an update to Final Cut Pro 10. If you're connected at all to the Final Cut community, you know all about this update already. However, if you're like me when I was initially getting started with Final Cut, you may only have a few connections. I may be your only source of information for Final Cut, so this may be the first you're hearing about it. You may have also had automatic app updates on, so the App Store just updated Final Cut for you, so when you opened it, you saw a screen similar to this of what's new in Final Cut Pro 10. So in today's stream, I don't want to go exhaustively through this list of all the little changes that they made. I just want to give you some tips about what to do when an update happens. And we are going to talk about one of the features, and if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat, and we can talk about other stuff as well. However, based on your responses over on Instagram at Final Cut Pro Help, you want to know more about these social media tools, which you can see is the second update there, or listed item on what's new in Final Cut Pro 10. So before I jump into this, the biggest warning, the biggest tip I can give you about any app update, especially with Final Cut Pro 10, is know what the app update is going to do to your system. And unfortunately, you can't know that. You just can't look into the future and know exactly what an update is going to do to your application and to your system. So before you do anything, and you should already be doing this, is make a backup of your data. You can always recover something if you have a backup. However, if you don't have any backup, there's no chance of getting something recovered, or if you can, there's some expensive options out there that can try and recover data, but you don't want to have to deal with that. If you're like me when I was initially getting started, you don't have money to just go and throw around on tools, even something like Motion, which is $50, that can be a huge expense. So data recovery, which can cost hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, depending on the damage that was done, is not worth the effort to go through, and especially the time. That's kind of even more important in some of those cases. So make a backup. If you don't know how to make a backup, do a search on my YouTube channel for Time Machine. Time Machine's a built-in app that can do the backup, but make sure that's working. Don't just assume that it's running. Check it. Make sure you have that backup. Once you have the backup, you can use the App Store to update Final Cut Pro. All right, that's just going to the App Store. You can go all the way up to the top left corner, go into the App Store. It'll load the App Store, and on the left column, there's this little updates button. So you can see I have an update for ScreenFlow and Logic. I've already run the updates for Final Cut, Motion, Compressor, all those apps. But this is where you'll usually see that update. Now, if you don't see the update here, that's very possible too. It could be something that has rolled out, but maybe your App Store hasn't refreshed or you haven't gotten to it. You can do a search for the Final Cut app, and usually that'll show you the update, and you can click on that to update. Once you've run the update, the next thing is updating your library. And we're going to come back to this list in just a second. I'll show you how to get to it. But when you open Final Cut Pro and you open up a library that has not been upgraded to the current version, you're going to get this message. Let's go and open up a different library. You'll see something like this that says the library, whatever the name of your library, in this case it's Homes at Final Cut Pro Help Library, must be updated to work with this version of Final Cut Pro. Again, this is why you want to make sure you have a backup, because if something strange happens in this update process, you want to be able to go back to it. Now, the good news is Final Cut Pro does make backups automatically for you. That's what it says there in the message. And so there are ways to kind of go back to an earlier version of the library. However, you don't want to trust Final Cut's backup as the only method. You want to have something like Time Machine or another method there. Depending on the size of your library, when you hit the update button, this process can take some time, because you can see it's backing it up and then it updates it. This library is fairly small, so it went pretty quickly. And now we're in our library. It should bring back all of your stuff as you would have expected it to look like, even if there wasn't an update. So this part's pretty straightforward, but that's what you're going to see after you do an update. If you see that message and you don't remember running an update, or you don't you're not really sure what's happening, I don't recommend just hitting continue and doing the upgrade. You should really go back and see why that message came up, and feel free to send a direct message or leave a message in the comments there if you have any questions about that. All right, so far, make a backup. You can use the App Store to update your version of Final Cut. And if you don't know what version of Final Cut you have installed, you can go up to the Final Cut Pro menu in the top left corner, click About Final Cut Pro, and it went onto my other screen, but here's the little update window, or the version on here is listed, so it says version 10.4.9, which is the current version. If you've been following the stream, you know we talked about WWDC and what Apple demoed there with Final Cut, so some of those updates that they demoed are in this version. However, we don't see a new icon yet, so maybe that newer icon version is 10.5 or version 11 coming when the other processors come out from Apple, so we'll see if that happens. So, all right, here we are. We get into Final Cut, and you may see a screen that says what's new and gives you the list of features that we were seeing earlier. If you don't see that, just go up to the Help menu and click on What's New in Final Cut Pro 10 to bring that screen back. And Final Cut, the kind of major features that are included in the various updates are going to be listed here. All right, so we're going to just briefly talk about each of these. You can go down and click on this complete featured list to go and view even more details of all the little things that are included in this update. But I kind of categorize updates into three different kind of pools. And some of the updates include what's called a bug fix. And that's just some problem that Apple or another developer found in the software. If you've gone up to the Final Cut Pro menu and clicked on Provide Final Cut Pro Feedback, you might have found an issue or requested a feature or something. And so the first thing is bug fixes. That's kind of the smallest thing that's included with an update, but is really important. Because if there's a problem, if you click on a button and it doesn't do what you expected it to do, that may be a bug. And Apple wants to fix all of those. So in most updates, there's going to be bug fixes. Some updates only include bug fixes, and you don't really see any big updates. If you think of this one, it's 10.4.9, that last number. A lot of times when they go from 0.8 to 0.7, or sorry, from 0.7 to 0.8, or in this case, 0.8 to 0.9, sometimes those point updates is what those are called, only include bug fixes. And those updates aren't as exciting, but they help and usually make Final Cut run a little bit smoother. So some updates only include bug fixes. The second level of kind of updates or things included with an update, and the way I like to categorize it, and most people do as well, is features. So are there features that are new to this version of Final Cut? And that's what's listed here. You usually won't see bug fixes and what bugs they squished in this update listed here. These are the actual feature updates. And this is something that is essentially some new functionality that you could not do with the previous version, or maybe it was something you could do, but it wasn't as good as what you can do now. So these are feature upgrades. And then there's kind of a third category that goes up that is just completely overhauling the app, where they change all kinds of different things. And that's where you'll see kind of a major update to the app there. But really, the two big things is what I like to look at when there's an update that comes out is, was it just a bug fix update, or are there actually new features? And this one has some new features in it. And these are the highlighted features. But again, if you click on this complete feature list, this will load up a web page that brings in even more detail with each of those features that were listed. And you can click on Learn More to learn more about them. And then you'll see the past updates that were released as well. So there's also documents out there like this one, the release notes, that actually gives you a list of every single thing fixed in this update. And if you are using Final Cut Pro, this is a professional app. This is not something like iMovie or the Photos app or some other app where it's considered more of a consumer level app. Final Cut Pro is a professional app. And I understand there's a lot of editors, probably like yourself, that maybe you're not doing this and you haven't gone through a professional education to learn all about video editing, production, and all that good stuff. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just you have to understand that Final Cut Pro is a very complex app. So it's knowing where to find answers to questions and what you have in here. That's what this list is all about. All right, so I think that's the major things I wanted to kind of discuss before getting into these features. So just to summarize, and again, look through YouTube. There's plenty other videos that go into all these into more detail. But we have an enhanced proxy workflows. If proxy is a word that you don't recognize or understand, the enhancements that have been made to the proxy workflow are super confusing. However, if you're used to using proxies, these features and these enhancements are something many of us have been asking for a long time. So what proxies allow you to do is essentially edit with lower quality or smaller files, which makes Final Cut usually perform better. And it's something that there's a lot of asterisks and little things that are about that maybe not so the case, but what the proxy workflow lets you do is really collaborate with others. And if you're someone who is editing some videos and maybe you share this to another editor, the proxy workflow is something you'll want to do some research about and learn about. And I'll be making more videos, but there are other ones on this channel that show the older workflow. The newer one essentially lets you create different sized proxies, which is pretty cool. And then we're going to talk a lot more about the social media tools that are included. We'll go into that next. And then there's some ProRes raw camera setting updates. If you are someone who maybe use Photoshop or you do a lot with still photography and raw photos, this is something that some people have said you can't do things like adjust ISO and exposure coming off the raw, so it's not a raw codec or it's not true raw. It is a codec or something. Yeah, there's been a lot of confusion around that. However, all you have to really know about this is that ProRes RAW, you have now additional settings where you can adjust the adjust specific parameters based on that raw file and that raw data, which there's a lot of reasons that's pretty cool. But just all you have to know is enhancements to ProRes RAW. There's also a newer audio crossfades feature, which this has been something that is pretty easy to do without this feature, but this feature allows you to do it really quickly, so that's in there. All right, so let's go into these social media tools. What does that actually mean? One thing it says there is that you can convert your project into square and vertical aspect ratios with intelligent cropping for each clip. So we're going to dive into that and show you what that means. Another feature that's kind of social media related that's included, if you go into your titles and generator sidebar up at the top left corner here, there's a new titles category here called social. And these are just some free templates that were included with this update. So that's always nice to see that you can use these. The biggest benefit that I've seen with these titles, because they're all pretty simple. There's not anything too complex with these lower thirds. There's not really fancy animations or anything like that. But the important thing is these ones adapt to different project sizes. All right, so when you click on new project to create a new project, always give your project a name. I can't tell you how many times I've seen untitled project 1, 2, 3 coming over to me when you have issues with a project. Make sure to name these ones so that you know what these are. So if this is just going to be our simple project here. And actually, let me go back, make sure I'm in the right library. Yeah, we're in this Homes library. I'm going to open up a different library because I actually have some projects and some things. I'm going to go into the sports library, which I already had updated before. But again, some of the video we're going to use here is just these sports clips, which you've probably seen over on the Instagram channel with the shortcuts. Almost all of these, except for a couple of these clips here, almost all of these are kind of your standard aspect ratio for a video clip. So they're horizontal. So let's create a new project, and I'm going to call this surfing. I spell it right here. And you can use the custom settings down in the lower left corner here to change what aspect ratio you're going to use. If you say use automatic, it'll set it based on the first clip you add. So before, in this list here, we had everything up to 360, but you now can create either a vertical or a square project, which is pretty cool because you don't have to go into custom like you did in the last versions. You would have to say custom and then actually type in a resolution, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just an extra step that's not really necessary. So we now have presets for vertical and square. However, I'm just going to create a normal 1080p project here with the normal resolution and say okay. So I'm going to show you some things that you can do. So here's my standard widescreen 1920 by 1080 project for some surfing clips. So I'm gonna grab a clip and just drag it down into the project, and there it is. I love the shortcut Shift Z to zoom to fit, just zooms into it. So there's a standard project, right? Makes sense. If you do Command N, again, let's go and do a new one here. I'll call this surfing square. And under my video format, I can change this to square and say okay. And I'll add the same clip down onto the project, do Shift Z to zoom to fit. And there's the same project, or same clip in this project. Now notice here, the difference is we have this view here, but notice the black bars on the top and the bottom. Because the default for conforming has always been really to fit the entire clip into the frame. And you'll see that in the inspector under spatial conform, the type is fit, which just means shrink down the video or adjust it so we can see the entire frame of the video in the project frame. But now what you can do is with the clip selected, you can go up to the modify menu, and there's an option for Smart Conform. So this is a new feature for, it's really for this purpose of switching from square to vertical and all of those various aspect ratios. So when you say Smart Conform, might take a little bit of time depending on how long your clip is or how many clips you have selected. You can do this on multiple ones. But what happened is it conformed the clip to fit in this frame. And I'm gonna use Command minus here just to zoom out in my viewer, shrink it down a little bit just so you can see what's happening. So this little square in here is our frame, because remember this is a square project. And then on the outside here, we see the full frame of this clip. And at the top right corner, if you don't see that, you can just click on this button to see the full frame. And right now we're in the transform tool, lower left corner here. If I'm not in the transform tool, you won't see those options. So lower left corner here, you can hit the transform tool button or use Shift T, like transform, to enter in the transform tool. All right, and then right now you can see the outline of this clip frame, but you can't actually see the video or what's in that extra area. So that's what this new button does, lets you see the outside of the frame. And that's really nice because then you can reframe the shot that's there. So I'm gonna do Shift Z again in the viewer here, click in the viewer, Shift Z, and just zooming to fit that square frame. So why do you want to see this extra frame? Well, Smart Conform is only half smart. It can initially adjust the size of the frame and position the clip for you. You'll notice it's positioned over a little bit because it thinks most of the action or what you want to see is now in the frame. However, if it doesn't do a great job of it, you can go in and add keyframes to adjust this. So right now my surfer is right on the right edge of the frame here. So all the way over on the right, and that's cutting off the surfer, not really bringing focus to it. So I can use the transform tool, just click and drag over to the left. I'll even hold the shift button just to keep the keep on this plane because it's in the right vertical alignment, just needed to change horizontal, and I'll let go of it there. Top left corner, I'll click on add keyframe. We'll scrub across this, surfer staying in frame until about here. It's kind of moving off frame here. So I'm gonna hold shift and click and drag this over. Because I already added the first keyframe, it automatically added a second one there. So now if I skim through this, you can see we get the surfer in frame. We'll keep going, surfer stays in frame all the way to the end. So we don't really need to make any other adjustments there. I can hit done at the top right to get that. So that's Smart Conform inside of Final Cut Pro. Now, that might have seemed like a lot of work, and I would agree that was kind of a good amount of work there, but we've been able to create some projects with different frame size using the square in this case, but you could also use vertical. I'm gonna use Command Delete though to delete these projects out of here and bring up another project. This one's another vertical project. So let's see this whole process again. With your vertical projects, and you probably already have a bunch of these, if you're ready to share this to social media, you may wanna convert this to either square, or in this case, we're gonna use vertical, to share it over maybe to IGTV or an Instagram story. You don't have to go through multiple steps like before. With this update, you can save some time, which is pretty nice. So in here too, I just added one of those social media titles in the lower left corner just to show you what happens with this one. So instead of creating a new project, calling it vertical, setting the alignment, copying, pasting all these clips in. That's what you had to do before. What we can now do is just right click or control click on the project. You can also select it and go up to the edit menu. And there's a new duplicate project as option. Before you had duplicate project and duplicate a snapshot. Now we just have snapshot, which does the same thing as duplicate a snapshot. But this new option, duplicate project as, is very helpful if you're sharing to social media and need to create different sizes of your project. So you can name your project. So this one might be for IGTV, let's say. And then under the bottom here, we get the options for what do we want to set our frame size as. So in this case, I'm going to go vertical. And my resolution is here. IGTV goes up to, actually, I think IGTV is more to that 720 size. But usually for Instagram, I like to keep the 1080 as the largest option. I don't think you get much benefit by going to 4K from what I've seen. So I usually go here to 1080. And you can change, you can't change your frame rate because that's based on the initial project. So if you click on this and are trying to change the frame rate, not something you can do. A lot of technical reasons behind it, but just not something you can do here. And then you have your audio and render settings. But this is the button I want to talk about, Smart Conform. So what we saw a couple minutes ago was Smart Conform in action. So this is it creating a new project. So we're saying vertical, and I'm going to check off the Smart Conform button and click on OK. And as mentioned before, the Smart Conform is this analyzing that's happening. In a lot of demos I've seen so far of this feature, everyone has kind of prefaced it with this may take a long time. And I agree, it may take a long time because it really depends on the clips that you're using in your project. How long are those clips? However, that analyze has always gone pretty fast for me, and I'm not on an extremely fast computer, just on a 21-inch iMac, a very simple machine. So it may take some time, but it's something that you shouldn't have to like set it and go to meal. It seems like you can set it and it'll go fairly quickly there. So here's our new project. I'll double click on it to open it. And now we're in the new project here. If you want to go back to your previous project, you can always click on this back button here, but there's now a new menu next to the project name that you can use to reveal the project. You can close those other projects if you need to. You have more options with what's showing up in the timeline here. I have not seen a huge performance boost in closing other projects. So you can see here it says close other timelines, which if you have opened compound clips or multicam clips or other projects, all of those show up in the timeline as a timeline. So you can close those other timelines. It might help with performance, but that will take away this option when you click here to navigate between projects. So just keep that in mind. So here's our new project. Notice that social title here adjusted automatically to fit in the frame. If I go back to the previous project, this is what it looked like before. And then in the new one, it's adjusted. And this is a feature, this adjustment is a feature that's been included with motion templates and motion in general for a long time. So you might find some of your plugins and some of your templates do have this feature and can automatically conform to different frame size. If not, you'll probably see updates to your plugins rolling out over the next couple months and years that include this feature to make it easy to switch between these frame sizes. All right, so if you remember, we did keep that conform frame size on. I'm gonna hide my browser here. So if I look through and kind of skim through this project, I can see most of these shots do look pretty good. They're all fitting in the frame. Notice there's not the black bars on the top and the bottom because it's automatically zoomed in for us. But like I said before, it's only half smart, so you'll want to go back and review your project and make adjustments as needed. For example, here's that surfing clip again, same issue as before. The surfer's over on the right side and we can't even see him at the beginning here. So I want to make adjustments to it. So with the clip selected, I'll do Shift T to activate the transform tool. I'll hold Shift on the keyboard and click and drag this clip over. Again, the reason to hold Shift is so that the clip doesn't move up and down like this. I want to keep it in that frame. So I'm just doing Shift and dragging it to the left. I'll click on Add Keyframe. I'm going to continue to skim through this project. Over here, he's more on the right side. So again, hold Shift. We'll move him over so that he stays roughly in the center of the frame there. and then it zooms out. You can see he's right here, so I'll shift again and zoom or pan over and go to the end. Looks pretty good. Again, anytime you add keyframes and are doing this movement of a frame, make sure to skim back through your project to see what it looks like. This might be a time too when you want to disable this option to show the full view area because this can be distracting. So use that button at the top right. Now you can see just your frame there and to see what it looks like. And you can see even here, he's pretty far over towards the edge of the frame here. That might be getting a little close. So I'm gonna do shift and drag to the right a little bit. And I can skim through. Now he's in a pretty good spot the whole time. I like how that shot is. The first one, yeah, the first one looked good. It follows the boat. Second shot here, another surfer again. At the beginning of this frame, this is great. I like how this is positioned. However, she quickly moves over. So I'm gonna hold shift, move this over to the right. Notice there, it didn't add a keyframe, right? So you do always have to add your first keyframe. So at the beginning of this clip here, with the clip selected at the top left corner, click on the add keyframe button. And then we'll move to the right. Now that I've added that first keyframe, I can hold shift, drag this clip over. Here it actually went and thought I wanted to do a vertical move. I didn't want to do that, so I'm gonna do Command Z, hold shift again and click and drag to the left. There we go. Surfer keeps moving over. So we're just clicking and dragging through. And this is adding all of these keyframes here. Keyframing does not have to be a complex process. But now if I skim through that clip, you can see that surfer stays in a pretty nice portion of that clip. Title's already conformed nicely. If the title isn't positioned or isn't to your liking, you can select that title, go into the inspectors to make changes to it. This is one of those social titles. If I look under the title inspector, you can see the options there. So we could go in and change the color, the position of it, where this title is located. You have those options there to make adjustments to it. So definitely play around with the settings that are there. Like any titles that are included inside of Final Cut, or at least most of them, these were built with Motion. So Motion also received an update, and you can right click on these titles and say open a copy in Motion, and this will allow you to go into Motion and make additional changes to it. Motion is, in my opinion, one of the best purchases you can make as an add-on to Final Cut if you have time to learn it, because all of these plugins and packs, at least most of them, were built only using Motion. There's certainly other tools that come into play, but all these plugins, and especially this social one, you can build this. You could build this before just using Motion, and you can build more complex and more stylized versions using Motion. So for $50 here in the US, extremely valuable purchase. So cool. So this clip looks pretty good. I like how that one's framed. Let's go to the next one. This one almost the whole time is in an okay spot. I'm gonna hit add keyframe here with that clip selected, move over and hold shift, drag this that paraglide in there, make sure that person stays somewhat centered. The shot here isn't framed right because the person goes off frame, but this is about as good as we're gonna get with that one. And this last one looks good as well. So that is how you convert using the Smart Conform and changing the project aspect ratios there. It's pretty simple. If we want to do this again, let's say we want to do use the same version, but we want to do a square variation as well, we can do that. This one, there's an option to duplicate project under this drop down. That's just a standard duplicate project. So we don't want to do that in this case. I'm going to do Command Z to undo that. I'd want to select the project, and you can either use the vertical one or the original version of this. I'm going to go back to the original, go up to File, Duplicate Project, Edit Duplicate Project As. And again, this is going to be our square version. We'll change this to square under Video for the format, and I'm going to use the Smart Conform. Again, if we're doing this for Instagram, I'm going to up the resolution to 1080 by 1080 and click on OK. All right, it goes through and analyzes the clips. Again, this may take some time, but this is analyzing them to know where that Smart Conform should place a clip. and then we'll double click on the square project here to open it up. I know it's open because it's listed in the project view in the center here, and you can see how we have a square frame and the title has been positioned there. So now if I skim through this clip, again, we have the same issues like other ones. So I can select my clip, hit the add keyframe button. I'm actually going to move this over, hold shift and drag to the left, position them on the left side there, and do the same thing that we did before. But because we're working with square video, the entire framing on this seemed to actually work out pretty well. So there's not many adjustments that I have to make to it. All right, and then a separate note, you may have noticed as I'm adding these clips and working with them, if you watch this add keyframe button at the top, it is disappearing at times when I don't think it should be disappearing. So just keep an eye on that. Like right there, the add keyframe button has disappeared, but I don't think it should have. I think we should still see those controls, even though the viewer's not active there. But sometimes they do stay there. I don't know. It's the controls and some other things I've seen seem a little glitchy, and that just comes with any update. So just be aware you might run into bugs and issues, which again, like I said at the beginning of this stream, that's why you want to create a backup just in case you need to go back. All right, so now we have our square version. That's using the Smart Conform. Just to summarize, when you are positioning clips at the top right corner, you can click on this button to now see your full frame there to make adjustments and reposition those clips. But that is the major feature, is the Smart Conform. That's the major feature that's social related, in my opinion. That's probably one of the most useful, that's going to save you time. The second feature would be going up to the edit menu and using this duplicate project as. That way you can edit a project in the full resolution. Then when you're ready to make changes, click duplicate project as, make your change here. You have the options now for square and vertical frame sizes. So you don't have to say custom anymore. You can just choose vertical or square. And then the third, less important, but still a social feature that's included in this update is the social titles category that's now included with a couple social media templates. Again, strongly recommend playing around with these. Click and drag them into your projects to add them. You can then select that title, go into the titles inspector to make changes to it. You can see this one has an option for a drop zone, so we can select that and add maybe one of our clips from our project to apply it, and that puts it into that square there. So these are pretty standard and simple titles, but it's really cool that these are included with Final Cut Pro 10, and I recommend that you play around with it and make some adjustments. And if you're looking to build your own templates, open these ones up into Motion using Open a Copy in Motion, and you can see what they've done with these titles and how they've built them. All right, so those are the major features included in this update to Final Cut Pro 10. Do I recommend updating? Well, it depends. Depends on your situation and how your setup works. If you're in the middle of a project, don't update. It's as simple as that. If you're working on something, finish working on that project before you do the update. It's just, there's no reason to run into an update and then find you run into all kinds of issues. If you're worried about it, make a backup of your current version, which again, there's plenty of articles and videos on this channel to show you how to do that, but make that backup, do the update, and just expect the worst. Expect something weird happens. Make sure you have those backups you can go back to. But in my opinion, should you update if you're in the middle of a project? No. Once you're done with that project, then do the update. If you're worried about things, wait a week. Follow Twitter, follow what's happening online, let other people run into those issues. Let someone like me who likes to test this stuff and play around with it, open it up and try it out, and then you can update afterwards. However, these updates are pretty cool, and I'm glad and happy with the direction that Final Cut is going. And this is Motion, though. I've opened up this title, like I said, in Motion. When you have a project selected under the inspector, there's these snapshots. This is a feature that's been there for a pretty long time. But you can see all the different frame sizes are included in here. These snapshots are what allow the template to conform or adjust to different frame sizes. So if you have some templates that are maybe third party, or you're wondering if they can do this and adjust based on the different frame sizes, just go ahead and say open a copy in Motion, click on the project under the layers tab here, go into snapshots, and then look for these other snapshots. If they're not there, you can create them. Just click the plus here, select your frame size, and then you can set up and rearrange all these elements in these different frame sizes. You'll see if I click on a different snapshot, here's the 9:16. This is your vertical option. You can see how it rearranges things and adjusts the position of each of these. If we didn't have these frame sizes, most likely the title and the logo would just stay over on the left side. It wouldn't adapt or move for these different sizes. But that's kind of this we can really quickly spiral into Motion, but that's just a quick overview of how you can look into Motion, add a template to see if it has those updates. Again, you have to purchase Motion. It's a separate buy. It's not included with Final Cut, but it is, in my opinion, a great update to go in and use it. The one last thing is about, again, the proxy thing. I'd strongly recommend watching other videos to go into more details, but under the view menu at the top right corner, before what we had was this option for proxies versus optimized or original media. There's now this option for proxy preferred, and if you're considering using a proxy workflow, using proxy preferred essentially allows Final Cut to choose to use proxies if they're available. If they're not available, it'll go and use the original or optimized media. So this is kind of a smart proxy mode that is pretty cool, and I recommend using there. As far as the proxies, though, when proxies are created, they can be created in different sizes and be used there. Cool. So that is working with Final Cut Pro 10 and some of the things included in the most recent updates. I know you probably have way more questions and want to know more about it, so please leave those down in the comments or go to anawesomeguide.com/support. You can always reach out to us on there. We're also on Instagram. You can always send a direct message at Final Cut Pro Help. But I want to know what you think about this update and what's included. And do you think we're going to see another big update to Final Cut that actually goes from, instead of from 0.8 to 0.9, maybe goes to 10.5 or even Final Cut Pro 11? Do you think that's around the corner? I sure hope so. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day.